Hey, I just watched the Series 11 premiere, and I have not scripted this. I'm just trying to speak my mind about how I feel so far with Series 11, Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, her new companions, and the direction Chris Chibnall is taking with the show, or at least what I perceive he's going to do. Okay, I'm going to try to break this down into three simple enough categories. I'll probably dig more into the later Chris Chibnall stuff in later videos, but okay, I'm going to first look at Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, this new take on the Doctor and how it's handled. Then probably talk about the monsters or the villains in this episode. And finally, I'd like to look at the companions and actually just the side characters in general in this episode. Now, Jodie Whittaker's Doctor is really good. I think she's got a strong grasp on what the Doctor should be like. And I really feel that she's going to prove a lot of people wrong with this part. Now, there's a lot of nice little bits of confusion and this general doctorishness. She's definitely one of the more eccentric takes. I am not the first person to make this comparison. I've glanced at pretty much spoiler-free reviews before watching it, and she does definitely have a real Matt Smith vibe, which I like. I'm a massive Matt Smith fan. Now, as far as the elephant in the room, her gender, they do not really directly reference it much. There is one scene which was actually put out as the sort of teaser scene before the episode, in which she is surprised to find she is a woman, which I think is a great way to handle it. It's a brief moment. It's not, drawn out. You don't feel that she's reacting with great negativity, and no one is trying to hammer home any ideology. She just lets the character be and the performance speak for itself. There is a lot of talk about identity and understanding who you are and moving forward and growth, which, yes, you could take that as a response to the gender change, but really I think it's just largely a great sort of meditation on regeneration itself and would not be out of place in any Doctor's first episode besides, say, the first Doctor. So, all that said, I think Jodie Whittaker is great for the part. I really look forward to seeing her in future episodes and stories. And so far, they're handling the gender swap really well, and I hope that continues into the future. Now, the villains, or villain for this episode, is actually really good. Not so good that I would want them back, unless they had something really cool to do with them, but just a teeth-faced warrior who's cheating to kill people and become leader. That's none of it's super original, but the visual design is really good, especially for its sort of sensor thing, which is a bunch of basically electric eels as the visual sort of cue I get from this. It kind of reminds me of Colony Sarth from Series 9, only not at all, and a lot of cool visual concepts. Now, basically the premise of this episode is Predator. Early on, they make it seem like it's going to be Transformers, but it's really Predator. And I don't mind that. It's a basic sci-fi concept. Someone is hunting humans on Earth, or hunting some sort of alien being for fun, or for some kind of show of power or authority. And it's a good concept. It's executed well in this. I don't really have much to say other than that. I'm glad that they didn't, bring back potentially the Sontarans, or Cybermen, or some little side threat from the series as a whole to introduce the new Doctor. It's especially good they didn't bring, the Daleks back. They let this new Doctor be new and not have some old threat, because the Doctor can stand on their own. And really, if we want to bring in new viewers, the best way to do that is to feel like a new show, like something moving forward, not drawing on nostalgia for the past. That is how shows die and become resigned to collector's sets, which isn't what Doctor Who should be about. Now, finally, the companions, or the side characters in general. Now, because I said side characters, I really want to say his name's Carl. I might get this wrong, but Carl is probably the most side character of the side characters who plays an active part in this episode. He is the guy that our main villain is hunting. Once again, I might be getting Carl's name wrong. So if it's not Carl, don't at me in the comments. But I really like that character. Originally, I liked them just as a one-off little scene where they're like, yeah, I don't want to know about things. This is not what I am into. I'm gonna leave now. And that would have been fine. I would have honestly remembered that and been like, oh, that was a nice little exchange. That's interesting. Brings some reality to the show. Then we find out that the alien is here to hunt him, and he's a core to the show, or to the episode. And that's a nice little surprise. Really, he's good comedy, but not in your face comedy. You just feel like, yeah, that's relatable. Same. Me. So, what I'm talking about is he appears to be this very depressed person who doesn't have a lot of self-confidence and is pretty much constantly listening to these semi-meditational audio tracks about how he's important, how he's brave, how he's special, just try to get through life. And yeah, that's relatable for some reason. Of course, I've never been unhappy. But it's a really nice grounded character who brings a layer of realism to the show, which I think is going to be what Chris Chibnall is shooting for. We sort of had a soap opera vibe for Russell T Davies' era, which I would argue was kind of exaggerated, and then we had a sort of dark fantasy fairy tale vibe for Stephen Moffat. So I think that Chris Chibnall will be shooting for a very realistic sort of grounded take on the show, which is kind of in line with Broadchurch in a weird way. Now, moving on, we have Tosin Cole and Mandip Gill's characters of Graham and Yasmin. Yasmin is interesting. We don't really get much as far as character from her in this episode. We get that she kind of wants to prove herself and make a difference in the police force, which is would be a good justification for traveling with the Doctor, and that you can go around and help people. We get Ryan, who is probably the core of the episode on an emotional level. I think a lot of it seen through his eyes were intended to sympathize or look at how he's feeling in given scenes. We open the episode with him trying to learn how to ride a bike because he's having difficulty with this. He's 19 years old and he's got dyspraxia, which is a coordination condition which has limited him in many various aspects of his life, especially riding a bike. And that's a nice little emotional scene. It's not some big tragic moment. It shows you that Chris Chibnall wants to look at people and to look at all the little details, not just what it's like to die or what it's like to be in a big epic fight, but that people are people all the time, and that there's lots of little things you can explore in drama, which I think it was a nice opening. It wasn't what I expected. I expected to see the Doctor running around and screaming and fire, or actually initially just trying to find a way not to crash to Earth. And this was a nice little surprise. Ryan seems like a good character who is going to be explored more deeply as the show goes along. Maybe this is just me spitballing, but maybe he ends up with some kind of technological advancement in neuroscience that actually fixes some of the problems he's going through, or maybe this just is more of an emotional journey where he learns to be more self-confident in himself and not hate on himself so much, which is something that I feel is strongly implied in his character. Then moving forward, we have Graham, who openly hates on Ryan quite a bit. He's not some bully, but he's his step-grandfather, and he seems to be a very sort of crotchety old man, not to the degree of a Scrooge, but to the degree of a lot of people you probably actually know in real life. And I am American. I understand that Bradley Walsh is very famous in the UK. He hosts something called The Chase, and apparently he's a household name, but for me, I had never seen Bradley Walsh in anything before that I can think of. And he gives a really good performance. It's very understated for most of it, for most of the episode. And you really feel like he could be someone you actually know. And definitely interested in seeing where his character is going to go because of something I'm about to touch on with my next character. He does feel like a flawed person, but someone who genuinely cares a lot. He cares about Ryan, even though he's not his biological family, and he does put him down a lot. He does this, I think, because he cares, and he doesn't know how to show that. And he is, though less willing to go along with adventure than some of the other characters, someone who is still open to new experiences, and I think could be interesting. An interesting viewpoint to do some stories from, as he's an older man who is not particularly after adventure. He's a bus driver and is very proud of that, and could be a really cool character. Now, someone who also could have been a really cool character was... I am not going to Google this right now, because I'm just going to try to film this all in one take and get my actual thoughts out there without filtering it through someone else's viewpoint. I don't remember her name, is what I was trying to get at. Ryan's grandmother and Graham's, Bradley Walsh's character's wife. She is a very I don't want to say interesting again. She's a very emotionally invested person, someone who obviously cares a lot for Ryan, and he cares a lot for her, and she helps to humanize Bradley Walsh's character and show that he does care deeply, and that they really seem to be in love in this episode. Now, in the opening of the episode, we hear Ryan describing in a YouTube video the most interesting or amazing woman he has ever met. And we are very strongly led to believe that this woman is the Doctor. This is the introduction of the 13th Doctor, and that would be a reasonable way to open it. No, he's talking about his grandmother, because she has tragically died in the events of this episode. And that... I don't want to make a character entirely about their death, but I think that is another way in which Chris Chibnall's approach to the show is about grounding it. Sure, we have a very fresh take on the Doctor, and I definitely feel that most of the episode is more of a positive vibe in general. It's about positive vibes and moving forward in a bright new direction. But when about towards the end, you have a funeral. You have Bradley Walsh's character crying. You have a bunch of bitterness, anger, and sadness coming out of Ryan. It does ground the show. It shows that there are consequences in this world, in this story. And I think that's a good choice. I know that the actress who played the character is at least reportedly back for other episodes. I hope those are flashbacks, or at most some kind of robot or clone or parallel universe person. Because if this death lasts, it shows that these characters aren't safe and that there are real stakes in the stories they're embarking on. Speaking of which, I know I said I was breaking this down into 3 parts, but the cliffhanger is nice. I like cliffhangers have been a staple of Doctor Who for decades, and this was a strong one. Obviously, we know they're not going to die in the vacuum of space, which is where they end up. They're trying to get Jodie Whittaker's doctor is trying to get the TARDIS back, and she accidentally sends them all to the vacuum of space, or at least that's what we're led to believe. Now, I think that was a strong ending. I think it was a wise from a marketing perspective because we don't actually see the interior of the TARDIS at all in this episode. We don't come to think of it, we don't see the TARDIS at all in this episode. So it leaves people. I'm going to watch it regardless, but it leaves a lot of people who might not watch episode 2 more reason to watch it, so they can see not only the TARDIS but the opening and closing music and see what's being done with that. Ultimately, I think Jodie Whittaker's Doctors was handled well. The villains are interesting. I'm looking forward to meeting more of them and seeing the new direction the series will go in without having to retread the past too much. And the characters and the world that has been built here and is being explored is something I am down to see more of. So, you know what to do. Like, subscribe. Tell me what you think in the comments.